Welcome to Fuzzybutts and Friends. Well, as much as it drives Fuzzybutts all over this place, absolutely crazy when they hear me say it, I am the host of this show, Yer Big Dog, Luke Robinson, back with you again. Also back with us again this week is Ginger Morgan. She's the co-producer and co-host of this show, and she's also the executive director of the Puppy Up Foundation. Ginger, how are you?
I am doing well, and I know that you don't particularly care for me talking about the weather, but it is not 100 degrees today in Memphis, Tennessee. It's only in the 80s, and I will take the cool down. And it's kind of, the warmer it is, it seems like the itchier the dogs are anyway, so that might be pertinent to our conversation today.
It probably is pertinent to the conversation today. And I don't mind you talking about the weather so long as it pertains to the Fuzzybutts, whether it's a good day to walk the Fuzzybutts or not. But yeah, it's been crazy hot outside, and the weather's been a bit intolerable for me to get me to walk my kids. Before we jump in and introduce our guest today, Ginger, I got to apologize. I'm a little bit under the weather. I kind of took ill this week. My voice is a bit strained. And also to boot, my Lumina camera just broke. So this is actually using my laptop webcam, which looks different. And God, I'd forgotten how bad this camera it really is. So I apologize if I look bad and sound bad this episode. My apologies to everyone. I'll get it figured out for the next episode. But on that note, we're excited to introduce today's guest. He's got a lot of really important things to talk about as it pertains to our Fuzzybutts and itchiness and the weather and other things. It's Dr. Andy Hillier. He's with Zoetis, done a lot of great things. Andy, I'm not really sure. You had a bunch of titles, so I just call you're the top dermatologist there at Zoetis. So what is your title there officially?
Well, thank you very much. Hey, it's great to be on your show, Luke and Ginger. You can forget all the titles. Just say that I'm a dermatologist. Actually, I'm a veterinarian. I practiced for 9 years as a general practitioner, so I know what it's like to be in general practice. And then I specialized and became a dermatologist, and I spent quite a long career, 17 years at Ohio State on faculty there, and I've been 10 years with Zoetis now. I lead our dermatology medical strategy, just to put it simply. It's what are we doing in the derm space? It's an incredibly important area. You mentioned the warm weather, and yeah, this is allergy season, right? I mean, we are seriously slap bang in the middle of allergy season. So yeah, allergies are the #1 reason animals are taken into veterinarians. And that common, just like allergies in humans cause respiratory disease, hay fever, asthma, allergic conjunctivitis. It's a skin problem in animals, okay? It's not so much a respiratory thing, it's a skin problem. So it's very important. And from our point of view at Zoetis, we've got 2 products that really help veterinarians, help pet owners address the issue. So yeah, that's why I joined Zoetis, because the opportunity to advance care for dogs with allergies was just something I couldn't refuse.
Yeah, Zoetis has a number of exciting drugs that are out or coming out. We just talked to one of your colleagues, Sharon Campbell, about Librela, and we're looking to that because one of my Fuzzybutts, he has osteoarthritis, and we're looking to see how he responds to that. He's the same Fuzzybutt that actually has seriously bad allergies. So this is a very pertinent episode to me. But before we get into the business Dr. Hillier, we'd like to start the show off with some fun, talking about Fuzzybutts. So before everyone freaks out, that's not a actual Fuzzybutt sitting in the chair behind him. Looks like it's perfectly behaved. So do you have?
That's the best sit stay I've seen in my life.
Yeah, that's a pillow.
Yeah, I'm a dog trainer, and that dog is being taught to sit still for a whole hour.
Oh, hey, Luke. In case I didn't tell you before, but August is Itchy Pet Awareness Month.
I think that's what I have. I have all the things that you were talking about.
You have itchy pet awareness?
Andy, all of the weeping and all the symptoms you were just talking about. I'm like, that's me. So I think I'm an allergic dog. I'm suffering from allergic dog month is what I'm. Yeah. So is August typically the worst month for allergies?
Yeah, you can take it's going to vary by dog. I mean, and just same as humans, if you're allergic to trees, That's your big deal. You're going to be springtime, right? August is going to be those who are allergic to grasses and weeds. So, you know, and the trees are kind of pollens are dissipating right now. But if we track these things, and this is the time of year, sort of between the May through September, that's when all of this peaks, and it's very similar on the human side, you know.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about we've got a lot to cover, and I tried to just sort of organize it and structure it in my mind so as how to address this. Let's kind of start broadly and generally, Dr. Hillier, with what are the just broad categories of dermatological issues that our pets are confronted with?
Yeah. Well, there are hundreds of different derm diseases. The good news from a veterinarian point of view is that 80% of what veterinarians see are related to allergies. Okay, so there's all sorts of other weird and wonderful, funky things that we have to manage. But 80%, you can talk to a dermatologist. 80% of what they see is allergies and various manifestations of allergies. And in veterinary practice, around about 15 to 20% of the patients that they see every day in general practice are itchy dogs. And the vast majority, eight or 9 out of 10 itchy dogs, is going to be because they got allergies. So whilst there's a wide spectrum of different skin diseases, and we've got to be cognizant of that, it usually funnels down to something associated with allergic dermatitis.
Okay, what are the main contributing factors, or what are the main I know some of those are parasitic, some of those are autoimmune. What are the big contributing causes of the dermatitis, though?
Yeah, so the main causes of allergic dermatitis would be what we call environmental allergies. Actually, the proper name is atopic dermatitis. So that's the dog that is allergic to environmental allergens, meaning pollens of trees and grasses and weeds, meaning mold spores, meaning house dust mites, and that sort of thing. It's all the same things that, as I mentioned, cause respiratory disease in humans, cause skin disease in dogs. Okay, so that's this environmental allergies, or strictly speaking, called atopic dermatitis. These days, because we've got pretty good parasite control, we've got some really good products to help control fleas. These days, flea allergy, whilst still present and common, isn't the monster it was maybe 10 or 15 years ago, when we didn't have such terrific products and fleas were more difficult to manage. And even just a few fleas could cause a dog that had allergies to fleas to be really severely affected. So it happens. There's still flea allergy for sure. And if you're not using anything to control fleas in a dog that's predisposed to developing allergies, they are going to get flea allergy. And then the next one is food allergy. So anything that's ingested, either it's part of the main diet, it could be a treat. You know, look, honestly, the public tend to overemphasize and think there is more food allergy than there truly is. And that's not to say it doesn't occur, but of all of the allergic dogs, probably only around 20% of them have food allergy. The vast majority have atopic dermatitis and or flea allergy. And then the final category, so that's 3. The final one is contact allergy, you know, and I think that we see that. You've probably heard of people, you said you got an allergic dog. The dog, at the time that the dog is having troubles, go outside and walks on the grass and rolls around on the grass and comes in, and it's horrible. Probably an element of that is contact allergy to the grass. And as a veterinarian, you know, we would hear that frequently. Yeah, every time I take my dog out, and if I don't keep it on the pavement or the asphalt and it goes on the grass, it comes in and is chewing its feet and rubbing its face and all sorts of things. You know, so a contact allergy is the 4th big category.
I have the unfortunate benefit of having Fuzzybutts that have at least been 2 or maybe 3 of those categories. My 3rd Fuzzybutt, Hudson, he had lifelong food allergies, and he was also a lifelong mast cell cancer patient. We were pulling mast cell tumors off of him, I think, for 10 years or so. He was a very complicated case, and I think actually what Ginger was talking about earlier, we can get to in a minute when we start talking about the wonderful therapies that Zoetis has developed. Um, yeah, so Hudson was food allergies. So food allergies constitutes 20% of the cases, so it's not a lot. But go ahead, please.
Yeah, I want to ask you about Hudson. Because I'm going to make a comment, and I just want you can agree and say exactly, or maybe it's different. But food allergy is actually, of all of the things that I've mentioned, food allergy may be one of the best. If you're going to be allergic, you might want to be food allergic because it's a matter of changing the diet. The hard, look, environmental allergies, we can't take away, pollens, we can't take away house dust mites, we can't take away mold spores, but we can take away and not expose a dog to food allergies. Now, some of them can be really complex because they're allergic to multiple different things in their diet. But for the most part, the challenging part of food allergies is the diagnosis, because you've got to put the dog on this extended hypoallergenic elimination diet. It's difficult to do. It takes 8 or 12 weeks. The dog's not doing well during it, so people give up. So we don't get to the point of being able to make the diagnosis very easily, which we really want to do because it's maybe one of the better allergies for a dog to have if it's going to be allergic. Was that your experience?
I think so. I think now that listening to your entire thread and thought process, I tend to agree with you, Andy, because once we figured it was the figuring out what was eliciting the immune response, the allergic response, that took Ginger can affirm that Ginger has co-parented my kids for the past, I don't know, ever since we started the foundation. So she knows all of my kids' ailments. And I think Ginger, when we finally figured out that chicken, eggs were a big contributor to
Barley.
his barley, but so once we figured it out, then it was manageable, like you said. But getting to that point, because and getting when you get it wrong too, if he ate anything, if we did a lot of events for our foundation, raising awareness for cancer and companion animals, and people would almost always invariably give Hudson a treat without asking, hey, can you have this kind of treat? They'd give him some eggs, and boom, he would have allergies for the next, 2 months. He would be itching. So, yes, it was probably a much more easily managed form of allergy. But once you set it off, boy, it goes for a while. It takes a while to get under control.
Yeah. Did Hudson have skin disease with his allergies and GI signs, or just skin if he had was exposed to, say, chicken or eggs?
Originally, it was just skin.
Okay.
I don't know if he had GI.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think he ever had any GI
You mean
issues.
GI like basically
Vomiting, diarrhea,
Yeah.
etc.
No,
Yeah.
he would just be skin.
That's one of the other misnomers, is people say food allergy. Well, my dog doesn't have any GI issues, doesn't have vomiting, diarrhea, loose stools, excessive flatulence, whatever. They don't have to. It can be purely skin disease and still something that they're ingesting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I didn't know that. I'd never heard of the other kind, but Hudson clearly there was food allergies, and that was the problem. And he didn't have the GI association. We gave him though. We did give him probiotics.
Good.
Pretty much, we managed his allergies fairly diligently. But my other one, and I kind of want to drill down on Indiana because he's the opposite, and his is extremely hard to manage. He has staph A, a recurring staph A, and we just can't get this under control, Dr. Hillier. And it's also affected all my other Pyrenees in the Morgan Manor, Ginger. That's where we have the studio, Ginger's house. And so all three of my Pyrenees, when they lived here, they got this vicious type of staph A. None of her kids got it.
Now you make it sound like I'm giving it to them.
You did. There's something weird at the Morgan Manor that you infected my kids with, but the tough thing though, Dr. Hillier, is I can't seem to get it under control. We've taken him, Indiana, to just about every dermatologist. Well, I don't know if we took him to I'm not sure if there is a dermatologist here in Memphis.
Yeah, there is.
Anyway, we've talked to a lot of people about it. But it's the type of staph A that forms those collarettes, those massive colonies around them, and you just have to give them that. Is it Doxa? What is the name of the?
Duox. We give him baths and
Duoxo.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that shampoo that's got
Yeah.
3 different of the powerful, and it's effective. Difluconazole is effective.
Yeah.
But man, we can't get rid of it. And the most recent person I think I talked with, Dr. Hillier, just said, I think now he's probably his immune response. He's just susceptible to repeat infections, so we can't seem to get rid of it. Have you heard of something like that?
Yeah, so just tell me, Luke, very quickly. I'll comment on it, but just let me ask: does he have allergic dermatitis and it's secondary complication to allergies, or no? It's just a straight out staph infection.
I think it's a straight out.
Yeah, okay. I was going to let Ginger speak separately because we always have 2 different pieces of the puzzle. I would say it's only the staph A. Ginger, you would agree? We only have.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But the antifungal medicine works better on him than like an antibiotic on that. Does that make sense?
Well, they're often complicated because, these dogs, and I asked the question about does he have underlying allergy, because the vast majority, 95% of dogs with staph infections, it's secondary to some other underlying condition. And because allergies are so common, most of them is because of allergy, but it can be because of other things. And until, some of the challenges, there's 2 challenges. Number one, some of these are very resistant and very difficult to treat, get control of. That's the first problem, okay? And it seems like you have parts of that. The other is, until you find out the underlying disease process that's affecting the immune system, it keeps coming back because there's a reason. You see, staph is a normal inhabitant of dog skin. It's a normal inhabitant of human skin. And it doesn't cause the vast majority of people who have normal immune systems, do not have allergies, etc., or dogs that don't have allergies, it doesn't cause a problem, okay? But under circumstances where there's an upset in the immune system because of allergies or other reasons, you get this overgrowth of the bacteria. And that causes the signs, the collarettes, which you so beautifully described. And it's not just staph, it also is yeast infections, what we call malassezia. There's yeast. And my guess is, and they both arise for the same reasons, underlying primary disease, allergic or otherwise. And if you've noticed with some of the azole drugs, I think, Ginger, you mentioned one, fluconazole or something, there's a variety of azoles, all of which do a pretty good job. If there's response to that, that's probably the yeast component that gets controlled. And mostly yeast is fairly responsive to treatment. But so one of your other challenges, you don't have a small, short-coated breed that you're trying to deal with, okay? And because the difference between trying to manage a dog topically with Duxo, shampoos, sprays, and all the rest, if you've got a miniature pinscher compared to a Great Pyrenees, different, talk about caregiver burden. I mean, seriously.
Oh, we have Moose, we have styling gel. It's like we've got his own little styling salon just to treat this persistent a problem that we can't get rid of. It seems.
And I will say that I have groomed him. He's a short-haired Pyrenees at this point. And since I started doing that and keeping his hair relatively short, we've been able to manage, because we see it, we're on it. We give him baths every week. And when it flares up, we give him baths every 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, every 2 or 3 times a week. So it's having a Great Pyrenees in the house is a challenge at times.
my hat's off to you, because that is, because it's not just something that, hey, 2 baths and we're done. This is an ongoing thing, and you're doing exactly the right thing. And the topical, as challenging as that is, because it's labor intensive, is what you have to do. You've got to change that environment on the surface of the skin. The way you do that is by clipping them short, using these topical solutions, countering the overgrowth that's happening. You're doing all the right things, and it takes a lot of effort. So well done if you're able to keep that reasonably well under control. Congratulations.
Let me tell you, it's a battle sometimes, especially with the baths, right, Luke?
Right.
I like sprays, there's 2 reasons why I like sprays. Number one, it's a little easier. Number two, with a bath, you put a shampoo on, and what do? We've kind of lather up the dog, and as soon as the dog's lathered up, we spray it off. You know, and a spray, if it's got an active ingredient, you spray it on and it dries on, stays on, and it has residual effects. So I really like sprays and mousses.
We do the baths, and I think we try to keep it on him for like 20 minutes. And then like the day after the bath, if we find anything that needs to be worked on, we spray.
You know, Ginger, that's, you did the time on with the shampoo, which is not the norm. Okay, that's not people. You've got to really tell people, leave it on for a while. And the second part is, don't get me wrong, shampoos are really great, especially if they're kind of crusties and all the rest. That helps you just clear away all of that stuff off the skin. Sometimes it's, you know, once that's all gone, then the bathing is less helpful and less necessary. But if you've got kind of lesions and you've got to just clear that stuff out, then you do have to bathe them. I agree.
Yeah. All right, let's so now that we got free veterinary advice for my kids, and that was worth every bit for this show. I did want to use them to sort of set the stage, because I like what you said, is that dermatology is vastly more complex than I think what pet parents think about it. And also, more importantly, the majority of people, it's even difficult for myself to remind myself that the skin is a very complex, large organ in of itself. And so it's going to have a whole host. It could have potentially a whole host of problems. So now that you said that allergies seem to be the biggest, I think you said 80% of the problem. Let's talk about what Zoetis is doing to address those with the new. I think it's a new class. Is it a new class of therapeutics that Zoetis came out with? Go ahead, please. Let's talk about how you guys treat. What is the treatment? Oh. That's Indiana Jones right there.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, listen up, dog. What's that dog's name, Ginger?
Indiana.
That's Indiana. Okay, and Indiana's not the one. No allergic skin disease.
Oh no, he's the one that has the skin disease.
Okay, all right. Hey, thanks for asking, Luke. Here, so before we have two products, and we have more coming, and we can talk about that later. But we have essentially two products which were massive advancements. And before Apoquel and Cytopoint, we're talking 10 years ago. So this year is actually the 10th anniversary of the approval and launch of Apoquel. And before that, what did we have as veterinarians? You know, it came down largely to steroids, okay? And look, steroids do an incredible job, but they come with baggage. And, you know, they may be effective, but there's side effects, and the side effects are really common. And certainly long-term, no one wants to use steroids. So we didn't have really any options for long-term, because, you know, some of the side effects of long-term use of steroids are life-threatening. And obviously no one wants that. So what Zoetis did literally about 16, 17 years ago and said, there's got to be a better way. In fact, my journey to become a dermatologist, I'll give you a very quick anecdote. 1989, I'd been in practice for 6 years at that point in time. I graduated in the middle of 1982. And in 1989, I had used so much steroids because it's all I really had that was effective. I said, and I was hurting dogs. I mean, I was improving their allergies to some extent, but I recognized a really high proportion of those dogs that were being treated with steroids for their allergies that I was doing harm, and sometimes serious harm. And that didn't sit well with me. It doesn't sit well with any veterinarian, of course. And I said, there's got to be a better way. I didn't realize that it was going to take almost 25 years and a journey through becoming a dermatologist that I would get to a place of working for the company that really did that by bringing out Apoquel and Cytopoint. And what they did, it was 6 or 7 years before Apoquel was approved. They said, you know, we got to understand this disease better. It's not just a, you know, shoot from the hip and hope we find something, or is there a different steroid? It was, let's understand what the heck is going on with this disease. And there are probably targets that we should neutralize that if we can are going to make a difference with, and if we're not using a steroid, we don't get all of those steroid side effects. And that's what they did. And the interesting part is, so Apoquel is what we call a JAK inhibitor, a Janus kinase inhibitor, but a JAK inhibitor. Now very common in humans. There's 6 or 7 of them approved, but it was the first JAK inhibitor in human or animal medicine. We were first to recognize that that pathway, the Janus kinase pathway, was critical, not only in allergies, but a variety of other things. And just recently now, it's only in the last 2 or 3 years that we've had JAK inhibitors on the human side for atopic dermatitis. And then the other part of it was Cytopoint's a monoclonal antibody. And we can talk about that, but monoclonal antibodies are fantastic and have been around on the human side for years. And I don't think anybody thought that we would maybe ever have monoclonal antibodies in animal health. And the reason being, if you look at any of the MABs, which are monoclonal antibodies, which are highly successful in human medicine, they're not exactly the cheapest thing on the human side. They cost, for the most part, thousands of dollars per dose. And it was like, well, that's great. We probably could utilize monoclonal antibodies in dogs, but we can't afford for people to have an injection every 4 or 8 weeks or every month and be paying thousands of dollars. It's just not going to happen, right? And yet we found a way to do that. And I think you mentioned to me before we came on air here that you'd spoken to my colleague Sharon Campbell, and we now have monoclonal antibodies to neutralize NGF for osteoarthritis and pain. Well, the first monoclonal antibody in veterinary medicine that was widely used is Cytopoint, our monoclonal antibody, which has done a phenomenal job. So this has really advanced our ability to manage these allergic dogs by understanding the science and reinventing what we need to do. It wasn't just, let's have another Me Too steroid or something. We had to really, and so we advanced our understanding of what's going on to be able to understand where do we focus our attention in terms of possible targets for treatment. Does that tell the story a little bit?
No, I like long stories. I love information and data. That's why I thrive on. Let me ask you a question, Andy. If you can tell me if that maybe your secret sauce, I don't know. How did you guys come up with a way to make it at scale so that it's affordable to pet parents?
I think there are a lot of points here that could be made, and recognizing that they're not the cheapest thing. An injection of Cytopoint is obviously varies by size of dog, but it's plus or minus $100 or so. Okay, for the average dog, let's just put it out there. I mean, it could vary from 50 to 150, but plus or minus 100, which is quite different to what I said and the examples I gave on the human side. I think there are economies of scale. Our research and the scale of research that you have to do on the human side is significantly more in terms of the numbers, the robustness, the controls than there is on the animal side. That's not to say that it's very weak. I think we do really great pivotal studies to understand efficacy and safety. And we have to follow a pathway. I mean, it's not, we don't make, as a pharmaceutical company, we don't make the rules. This is FDA or USDA. We have to follow their guidelines. But the investment needed on the human side to get to a commercial product that's available for use is significantly more. Okay, there's no getting around that. And I think that's at least part of the explanation, Luke, if that helps you understand why there's this difference in cost and price.
Well, I'm sort of just show me the results kind of guy at the end of the day when it comes to fuzzy.
Hey, Luke,
yeah.
You're kind of cutting in and out a little bit because you're moving back and forth away from your mic.
Okay, this is okay. Is that better?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, well, my first camera went down. This is my laptop camera. I don't know if my laptop camera is going down. It's just been with me, and then also whatever's going on with me. It's just been a cascade of events. My apologies to everyone. Let's see if I can remember what my question was, Ginger. Oh, I'm in the results kind of guy. The fact that it's affordable within $100 ish for a shot, that's a wonderful thing. So I actually want to know the pathways, and we do have veterinarians that kind of listen to this. So what makes Cytopoint and Apoquel? What makes the pathway that they act, that their mechanism of action different from what we think of traditional like antihistamines and other meds? That's what I would like to know. Sure.
Yeah. Well, let me keep it reasonably straightforward is by understanding what's going on. You see, steroids work, like I said, they come with baggage, but they work. But they're like the atomic bomb, okay? They affect almost everything. So that's great in that they affect the abnormal pathways that are amplified in allergic dermatitis, but they affect a whole bunch of other things. What we've discovered is to really be able to, this Janus kinase pathway that I mentioned, so we can target on there, and we are affecting the only pathway that's dysregulated in allergic dermatitis, and not a whole bunch of other things that are part of normal functioning of the body. And so we, that's why there's a difference in the safety profile. So the advancements that we've made is to be more targeted in our therapy. Instead of just throwing everything at it, which is what a steroid does, and saying, yeah, I mean, something's going to stick somewhere because we're covering the bases, is to say, we know this is exactly where we have dysregulated immune response, and that's what we're going to control. And when it comes to Cytopoint, the monoclonal antibody, if you want to talk targeted, that's as targeted as it gets. What it does is neutralizes a single protein. It's a chemical in the body, just one thing. It's like when you inject Cytopoint, it's like a sponge, and you soak up all of what's called interleukin-31. And what we know about interleukin-31 is it's the major reason that there is itch in dogs with allergic dermatitis. So if we soak all of that up, we take away the major inducer of itch, and dogs don't scratch and bite and lick and chew. Okay.
And it happens almost immediately.
And it's real fast. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I had to. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I said, does my explanation of the two things help you understand a little about, the pathways and the mechanisms?
Yes, actually, like you said, since Librela is also monoclonal antibody, Dr. Campbell did a wonderful job explaining precisely how NGF is the target, and it's that targeted aspect of the monoclonal antibody that makes it so effective without having so many of the downstream costs or side effects. So let's go talk about that now, Dr. Hillier. So what type of so you've got a wonderful, wonderful monoclonal antibody targeted therapy for allergic dermatitis. What type of side effects do we see? What dogs that have allergic dermatitis should not take these? Let's kind of get to specifics about. And also talk about, have we talked yet about the difference between Cytopoint and Apoquel? Let's break both of them down.
Sure. Fundamental difference, Apoquel is what we call a small molecule pharmaceutical, okay? What that means is it actually acts on the inside of cells. It's very small, crosses cell membranes, and goes in. This Janus kinase enzyme that it inhibits, it's inside the cell, okay? And it's inside the cell. That enzyme system, when activated, activates cells and activates all of these inflammatory and immune cells, and that's why it gets out of control. If we inhibit that enzyme, we don't get the cell activation, we don't get attraction of all these inflammatory cells, we don't get the dermatitis, okay? So it's what we call a small molecule pharmaceutical. It acts within cells on this Janus kinase system. Cytopoint is a monoclonal antibody. Antibodies are ginormous. They can't possibly get into cells, okay? So they're in circulation more. And what they do is they are very specific in their target, and it's individual. And so they will then, you correctly pointed out, Librela targets NGF, nerve growth factor. Cytopoint targets something totally different, interleukin-31. So it's that interleukin-31 that's in circulation before it binds to a nerve ending and sends an impulse that says to a dog, wow, I need to scratch here, okay? It binds to it and stops interleukin-31 from binding to those nerve endings. And you pointed out one of the great advantages when we talk about safety, and it's the fact that it's so specific. There isn't another protein in the body that the antibody in Cytopoint could bind to, nothing. So you don't get any collateral damage. It's not like, well, at the same time as it binds to interleukin-31, it might bind a little bit to this, that, and the other, which could cause problems. No, It binds to one thing only, and that's interleukin-31. And that's what elevates the safety profile, because there's just no collateral damage. And as I mentioned with the steroids, there's lots of collateral damage.
Right, right. As it's also the case with most non-targeted therapy, is it just it's going to cause downstream problems at some point? You know, I always like to say, it was perfectly said somewhere else that there are no solutions in life, there are just trade-offs. And that's certainly true in therapeutics, the pharmaceuticals, and in the human organism. Whenever you're introducing something into a system, a complex system, it's going to affect the system at some point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
No, you're right. And look, I think that the safety profile of like Cytopoint is phenomenal. You know, and in fact, when we got approval, and if you look at the label, and as a veterinarian, you pull out the package insert and you say, okay, what are all the things I've got to be worried about? Right. It's like so clean, you know, and I think that's one of it speaks to what I was mentioning. At the same time, I don't want to pretend that it's trade-offs, okay, yeah. And I don't want to pretend that there are zero side effects there, but they are really uncommon, if not rare. There's going to be a very rare dog that could have a hypersensitivity reaction to it. But these are so few and far between that the upside far, far outweighs that downside of potential adverse events. They occur, but they're really, really uncommon.
How long has it been on the market here in the United States? I knew
Cytopoint?
Yes.
7 years. So Cytopoint's been 7 years, and there are around about 7 million dogs treated. Okay. Apoquel has been on the market for 10 years, and we've exceeded 13 million unique dogs treated, which is awesome. When you think of 13 million itchy dogs that have received benefit, you know, that just makes us really proud.
I guess the last thing that wasn't entirely clear in my mind is, when do you use Cytopoint and when do you use Apoquel? Do you use them ever in tandem at all?
Yeah, I think there are two options. And these days, the way we practice veterinary medicine, or the way it's evolved, is, you know, when I was a young veterinarian, people came and we almost had what you might call a paternalistic attitude. They said, my dog's got this, and you would say, this is the problem and this is what you will do. As a pet owners don't want to hear that these days. They want to be partners. They want to hear what are my options, doc? You know, and what's going to work for me, what's going to be best for my dog based on outcomes, potential adverse effects. What do I have to do? Gosh, that sounds wonderful, but you asking me to do that? No way in heck can I do that. You know, for example, you might have an owner of a Great Pyrenees who said, bathe in my dog every day for 2 weeks. Some people or whatever it might be the right thing to do, but it's impossible. And if you can't do it, then it's not going to work. So I think that, you know, on the one hand, we have Apoquel, which is a daily oral medication, okay? And very soon will be in a chewable formulation. We've just got approval for Apoquel chewable compared to the regular tablet. And on the other hand, we've got an injection that is administered at the veterinary clinic, and they have very similar effects, but it's an injection once every 4 to 8 weeks. So you can see, someone might say, daily tablet, I can easily give my dog a daily tablet, and I don't have to keep coming in every 4 to 8 weeks. Someone else might say, what? You want me to, it's hard enough giving my dog a tablet for 3 days in a row. You want me to do this every day? You know, it's no big deal for me to pop into the clinic every 4, 5, 6 weeks, and I don't have to do anything else. It's just come in here. Do you see how? So you've got to understand the owner's needs, understand that pet's needs, and figure it out with them. Partner with them to find the solution that's going to work for their dog and for them.
Yeah, if I have to give one more pill, I think I might be over the edge.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Is that
so? Can I comment on that?
Please, go ahead. Yeah.
There is, when I practice as a veterinarian, I had a misunderstanding of the challenges that the majority of owners experienced giving oral tablets, especially if it was for more than just a couple of days. And we've done some incredible market research recently. And we asked 250 pet owners, okay, who have allergic dogs. And we said, you know, do you have any challenges giving pills? It was 65% were challenged. 35% said, nope, I can, no problem. So about a third, you know, and you know, there's Labradors that'll eat a rock if that's what they want to eat, you know, and it doesn't.
Or Great Pyrenees, yeah.
or Pyrenees, but 65% of people were challenged. They either couldn't give it down the dog's throat, pulling them, or even in food. 2/3 of those couldn't even give it in food. The dog would find it in the food, say, I'm not eating that. And when we showed them a profile of Apoquel tablets and Apoquel chewable, and we said, what would you prefer? You know that the answer was 70% said, I'll take the chewable, thank you. You know, yeah. And we don't, and I as a veterinarian, I know I cringe sometimes what I used to ask owners, because I would say things like, can you give your dog tablets? And Ginger, if I asked you that, you might be embarrassed to say it's difficult. You might say, yeah, I can do it. Okay, because with difficulty, you can do it. Whereas, hey, Ginger, can you share with me your experience last time you gave your dog tablets? And that's a very different question.
Yeah.
It's open-ended. And as soon as an owner hesitates, you know, they go, you say, inside I'm saying, yeah, I know exactly. They have a challenge. So if we learn how to ask questions, instead of, you know, not closed-ended, but open-ended question, let an owner share their experience, we can really find solutions that are going to work for the owner and for the dog.
You'll find that two-way conversation true over on our end, because and that's how it should have always been, but for some reason our society wasn't. And that was true also in every professional relationship. It was always, oh, the professional knows best, let them figure things out. But now we have pet parents that are a lot more active, and they want that partnership. That partnership is important because data goes two ways. If you're administering a pharmaceutical or a therapy, and you need to make sure that I give you all the data that you need to assess whether that's successful or not. So it's an important, the relationship has changed, and for the better. It's an important thing. Data is a two-way stream between the practitioner, the caretaker, and the pet parent, for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And in terms of the options, it's not, you know, one of the things we're going to have to educate our customers, our veterinarians and veterinary healthcare team members is it's not to say to them, you've got, you know, if you're going to make an offer of two options of Apoquel and Cytopoint, a daily tablet versus an injection every 4 to 8 weeks, I've got Apoquel tablets and I've got an Apoquel chewable. And Apoquel chewable has over 90% palatability. So make sure it's not just, this is what Apoquel does. There are Apoquel tablets, and there's a chewable tablet, which will be available in a couple of months' time. They don't know that. We make sure that they understand their options. And today's pet owner, to your point, Luke, wants to know what their options are. They're pet parents, and they do want to know what's best for their pet.
Absolutely. So what's next for Zoetis in the world of dermatology? What are the next big issues that they're looking at, that you're researching, that you're trying to tackle?
Yeah.
That you can disclose.
Yeah, well, I will disclose. I mean, I've disclosed about Apoquel chewable. We got approval. Where are we now? August. We got approval in June, and we'll be launching that in October. And we're very excited because we do understand that it's a challenge. And so, you know, being able to meet pet owner preferences, pet owner needs for a condition that you are both familiar with, that is, you know, allergies don't go away. It's not there are some dogs who have a very short season, and once or twice a year for about 10 days, they get itchy. You know, 10 days worth of treatment, they're good for the next 6 months. If your dog is that, be thankful, okay? Because most of them, it's a longer season or year round.
I have one of my dogs that she gets probably 1, maybe 2 Cytopoint shots a year, and she's good. It's all during that whole allergy season that you were talking about before. So yeah, so I only have to take her extra to the vet once or twice a year. So that's good for me than trying to give that dog a pill. Yeah,
exactly. So, but we are focused on allergies, even though we've got what we believe are 2 really amazing products. We still have dogs that are very difficult to manage. It's a fact. And so we believe this is so important, and we are so invested in the area. You know, we could have said 2 great products. Hey, we're good to go here. You know, I mean, we've made that game-changing difference, and we've really advanced everything. we're fine. And in fact, the reason why I'm still with the company is because I know what our commitment is in terms of the research. What are additional targets? The dogs that don't respond quite so well, it's a minority, but they're dogs that unfortunately don't do very well on anything that's available. We've got to find other options. And the other thing, Luke, to your question is, we talked a little about staph and yeast infections. Those, and you expressed, if I could find a better solution for staph than what you and Ginger have to do, I think you'd be real happy. And so we are focused on some novel areas of research and finding solutions for these really difficult to manage staph and yeast infections. And then there are a variety of other things as well. But yeah, I'm excited by what we are working on. And, I think in 5 years' time, we're going to say, gosh, we've really made further advancements. I think it's an exciting time ahead.
It is. In all aspects, I think, of veterinary medicine and pharmaceutical it's amazing our capacity to discover and learn and make improvements. I'm certainly a glass, totally empty kind of guy. That's just the way I am, especially when it comes to veterinary medicine. But every once in a while, I'm able to sit back and go, in the 15 years, I think that I've been working with the foundation, the Puppy Up Foundation, and been intimately involved in Fuzzybutt issues concerning Fuzzybutts, we really have come a long way.
Yeah.
In therapy and therapeutic development. Your company alone, now you've seen the introduction of several revolutionary therapies. You were Palladia as well, right?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Palladia, now Cytopoint, and Librela. And so you guys are leading the charge, and it's good. It never moves as fast for me. Because when you have a sick puppy, that's when you need the solution right then and right there at that moment. But we know how drug development and discovery goes. It's a long process. It takes a long time, especially to get it right. We had, I'm not sure if you know Phil Bergman. He runs clinical trials for you. A great guy, good friend. And that's what we were talking about, is that you got to make sure you do it right. There's a way to do trials, and there's a way to make sure that the next generation of therapeutics that are out there, that they're not going to do any injury or harm. So it's very important. So I always find myself in that interesting dynamic where I want things to move faster. I want new novel therapeutics to be developed, but on the other hand, they have to be done the right way. And like you said, is we've got to make sure we're targeting the right things, and that target's effective over a long time. So Zoetis, you guys are doing a lot of great things there. Is there anything else, Dr. Hillier? Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about?
No, I appreciate your comments about Zoetis. And obviously, there are other companies who are doing great things, but I think we've led the way in derm and some other areas. And it's what keeps people like me at the company. As I say to you, if we just said, oh, we got two good things and all we're going to do is maximize the commercial opportunity, I would have said, well, okay, that doesn't work for me. But I do think that the other aspect that what's changed, and we really have to understand, and I think we're doing a much better job at it, is something that we've kind of mentioned, is pet ownership. It's not pet ownership. It's part of the family, okay? And that changes the dynamic. The understanding of that human-animal bond. As a veterinarian, I think that is so incredibly important. When you come in, Luke, and you bring your dog in, one of the first things I want to know is, so why is this dog, India, why is this dog important to you? Okay. And for some, that's a long story, and for others, it's a shorter story. But if I can understand that, then now that will absolutely influence how I'm going to communicate with you, how we build a partnership, how there's building trust and confidence. I think it's something that, and it's not an easy thing. It's a little touchy-feely sometimes, and not everybody's good at that. But to me, there's that simple question, which, when I was in practice, you say, can you just, when I first met someone, I'd say, just share with me, why is this dog so important to you? It's a simple question, and the stories you hear are incredible. And it made a difference to how I would interact with those people and my commitment to them and their pet. And I think we're understanding that a whole lot better now, and finding ways for veterinarians to lean into that space at least, because it's so influential in terms of improving quality of life. The caregiver burden that we sometimes impose that is really challenging. We've got to understand all of those things. It's not just about having a couple of wonderful drugs in your hands. I mean, that helps, and we need that. But the surround sound of understanding the home environment, how they're affected, what the importance is, what that bond is what really leads to a long-term solution and success, and not just, oh, I've got this great drug, here, go and give it. You know, that's not what it's about. So there's much more than that. And I think we amongst others, are really understanding that and trying to make that part of the way we practice as veterinarians.
Yeah,
I think that would make a huge difference. You know, for me to have my veterinarians ask me those questions, like, why are they so important to you?
Yeah.
Because you might figure it out when, with one of my dogs, I called him his son all the time, like, son, come here. And everybody would laugh, but he came. So it was, you know, something that I did all the time. I do have a couple of questions, Luke. I don't know if you were going to get to this or not, but
before we get to those questions, let me just get this in real quick, because then you're going to get me diverted. But I like to just hold on 1 second. I like to use a term that you're familiar with, and that's mate. And that's what my boys are. They're my mates. They're my boys. They're my sons. And you have, when you take that responsibility on, when you have a mate that can't make medical decisions on their behalf, the best medical decisions, that's a tremendous onus. That's a tremendous responsibility. So that's why that partnership, like you said, is so important. It's my job and Ginger's job to communicate to scientists, to practitioners, exactly the nature of that relationship. And it's like, my mate can't make medical decisions on their own, therefore I have to. So I have to make sure you're giving me the best medical advice. It's truly a partnership. We like to call them companion animals, Fuzzybutts, but they're part of the family. They are the family. And in cancer research, you know, we no longer think about it as dog cancer or human cancer. It's one cancer in a shared ecosystem. So that partnership between companion animals and people is very important, sociologically, but also therapeutically as well. Go ahead, Ginger. Sorry about that.
Well, I don't know, but this whole time, you guys would probably see me like I'm itching. The whole thing, the whole subject just makes me itch. So we talked about allergies, but what about just basic dry skin? Do you all have anything that treats that, or is it a food issue, or should we be giving like some type of fish oil, or you've got the floor?
No, it's a great question. So a little bit like I spoke about the staph and the yeast, you know, dry skin, I mean, significantly dry skin, there's a lot of flaking. Then there is some underlying pathological issue, okay? And whether it be associated with itching, in which case it's underlying allergy, or it might be associated with some other lesions which could demonstrate autoimmune or something else, if it's significant. But you do get dry skin that's just dry skin. And if that's the case, and in fact, you know, we have what's called barrier defects in allergic dermatitis. And what happens if you don't have the right barrier in the skin is you get what's called transepidermal water loss. It just, water evaporates off the skin and it dries out more and more. We can overcome that, and it's mostly with topical. And we as Zoetis are not in the topical space. We have a few very small topicals, but we have not invested in the topical space, for the reason that we would invest in the topical space if we had something that was very differentiated. There are tons of topicals which do an awesome job. It's the application of them on a frequent basis that is a little more challenging. But what we're trying to do is fatty acids, for example. There's a variety of ingredients of topicals, from phytosphingosines to a variety of fatty acids to ceramides, all of which repair that barrier. You repair the barrier, you don't get the water loss. And so there's hands full of them. I mean, tens of them, hundreds of them that will do that. And you look for, you know, it needs to tell you about barrier repair if you've got dry skin. You can also do it systemically by fish oils and a variety of oral medications as well. But for the most part, it's best done with topicals, and that's the dry skin part. Yeah, and it happens at certain times of the year. For us as well. In the middle of winter, if you've got a little bit of dry skin, you're going to really know it in winter, and it's less of an issue if in the summertime. So that's my comment about topicals. For the most part, again, associated with some underlying condition, that there are some dogs that just kind of have some dry skin. And it's mostly about the topicals.
I was afraid you were going to say that. Because for the dogs that I was talking about, one of my dogs is a Pyrenees mix. So whatever he's mixed with, he has the Pyrenees hair, if not even worse than that. And the other one is a Chow mix, and they both kind of have some dry skin. So I'm like, okay, those topicals aren't going to work for me.
Yeah.
Do you recommend any topicals for just dogs that don't have any type of allergic dermatitis or any skin just as like a general maintenance, just giving fish oil? You mentioned those supplements. Yeah. Do you recommend any of that on a normal basis, or just in case they need it, in the event that they need it?
Yeah, I think, dogs that don't have skin disease, the question I guess might be, how often should I be bathing my dog, And there are dogs, golden retriever or something like that, which I have golden retrievers, love to go out and show them a mud bath, and they're in there, and my dog needs to be bathed every week, but you might have a dog that stays on the asphalt and goes for a walk. There's no greasiness, there's no smell. And if you said to me, I've seen dogs on regular wellness checks once a year, and the dog's healthy, the skin's healthy. And you ask an owner, how often do you bathe your dog? Once every 3 or 4 months. If I'm evaluating the dog and everything's up, I don't have a problem with that. But there are others who probably should bathe more frequently. So I think there's a lot of variability depending on lifestyle, environment, whether there's skin disease or not. And if your dog doesn't have skin disease, the one thing I would say is use a shampoo made for dogs, not a shampoo made for humans. Will a shampoo for humans work? Yes, but you may be more likely to pick up some problems and some irritation, especially a lot of shampoos have all sorts of additives these days that may not be real good for dogs. So make sure my comment to people is make sure it's a dog shampoo. And if you can, and you don't really don't want to do any harm, something that just says hypoallergenic on it. That's perfect.
Excellent. All right. That's all the questions I have on my end. Were there any? I didn't make a note here, Dr. Hillier. Were there any interesting patient cases that you wanted to mention, or anyone that responded very, very well to Apoquel or Cytopoint, or anything you want to point out, or anything else you'd like to mention here on Fuzzybutts and Friends for our pet parents?
Sure. What I would mention, Luke, is just we have Apoquel and Cytopoint are two wonderful products, and there's plenty of studies to demonstrate how effective they are. They don't work in every patient, but the vast majority of patients derive some or a huge amount of benefit. And the one thing that I would say is that we hear from people, well, Cytopoint or Apoquel used to be great. Here I am 6 months later, it's not working, okay? And it's not working nearly as well as it used to. And we don't have too many options. And the fact is that we have studies that demonstrate this, if the products work well initially, they are highly likely to continue to work well. That's not ignoring that there are observations by pet owners that 6 months later, 9 months later, 12 months later, it's not working so well. What needs to happen is you need to take your dog to the veterinarian, because for the most part, it's not a loss of efficacy of Apoquel or Cytopoint. It's something else that's come up. The infection's back and they didn't notice, either the staph or the yeast. They forgot now that everything was going so well. We're not using parasite control. We're not controlling for fleas. Everything was going so well that I'm not as strict with my diet, because my dog also had a dietary problem, a food allergy, but we were doing so well. I thought, gee, I don't really need to, or there's been dietary indiscretions. So whilst there can be a little bit of a loss of efficacy in a very small percentage of patients, for the most part, It needs to be evaluated by a veterinarian, and there's a reason why there is apparent loss. Because if we just give up on it, the same thing's going to happen with the next one. And then suddenly all 3 products that are available that might be effective, we've used them all. Now we've got nothing. And we'd hate to lose sight of the fact that regardless of what it is, mostly if they work well initially, they will continue to work well. It's an important point.
Right, but they don't have to go see a board-certified dermatologist, veterinary dermatologist, to be able to do that, because I'm sure as you know, and you've experienced in your profession, is that trying to get all the current data down to general practitioners, GPs, that's a large number of people. A lot of people in that make up that population, and it's hard to get. So if once your Fuzzybutts on Cytopoint, what do you recommend to help manage and maintain them on that? Should they go see a board certified? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, you don't have to, because there's this wide range of manifestations of allergic disease. And if you look across the spectrum of how significantly dogs are affected, the majority of them can be and should be very well managed by a general practitioner. Okay. So, a criterion is something like, if in a period of 6 months, you've been 3 times to a veterinarian and you haven't found a long-term solution, you know what? You might want to think about going to a dermatologist, okay? So, it's 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. If you've 3 times and you've, shooting from the hip on 3 different things, and it includes stuff that should work, maybe it's time to see a dermatologist. One of the things that I say to owners is that I try and educate them is because it's about setting expectations, okay? And if you don't set the right expectations, you're setting yourself up for failure or disappointment. And speaking to what I mentioned, I say prepare for the flare. Flares will happen. And there's what's sometimes referred to as an 80-80 rule. I tell people, I can control 80% of your dog's disease 80% of the time. What that's telling them is that don't always expect 100%. 80% would be awesome, yay, okay? And if we can do that for 9 or 10 months of the year, yay, okay? And we might be a little challenged for a month or 2. That's not failure. That's just, this is the bad time. It's August and September because your dog's horribly allergic to weeds. We're probably going to struggle just a little bit. We'll need to add some additional medication. So it's just, you see what I mean in terms of just ways of communicating to people about expectations. And then we shouldn't expect cure or 100% all the time.
Right. And so you haven't seen sensitization or sensitivity to the drug that's developed over time where it becomes less efficacious. Have you seen that?
Yeah, we've looked at some data. I can tell you with Apoquel, it's maybe, and with Cytopoint, of all of the dogs that are what we would call satisfactory responders, they respond to either of those. It's probably somewhere between 5 and 8% with long-term use may lose efficacy. So it's a handful, okay? The opposite of that is that dogs that respond, somewhere between 92 and 95%, will maintain their response, okay? So it can, like I mentioned, it can happen, but for the most part, it's not because of lack of efficacy. That's a small number.
Well, people that don't think that they're idiopathic responses or atypical responses just don't, I think, take into full consideration how vastly complex the organism, whether that organism is a human or a dog, is. And so you're not going to get 100% consistent results 100% of the time. And I think 80-80 is that's a good, that's, if I could reduce Indiana's Staph A 80%, 80% of the time, I'd be doing that for sure. As Ginger said, for us, it's really controlling the microenvironment. That's just the best and easiest way for us to do it. All right, Ginger, speaking of allergies, I'm actually having a bit of my own over here. I've been trying to mute it. I've been trying to look away and make as little noise as possible, but it's getting worse and my eyes are watering. So my apologies for not being 100%. Ginger, did I screw anything up other than sounding funny and looking funny? Did I miss anything this time?
You did not screw anything up, but real quickly, I did want to ask about skin cancers, because we typically do a a tip of the week, like a cancer tip of the week. So what would a skin cancer look like on a dog where you can actually see their skin, not a Great Pyrenees, because you've got to dig through that.
Yeah, there's some really common ones like papillomas, okay, which is induced by papillomavirus, same as in humans. You get papillomas. We get sebaceous adenomas. These are the kind of common things. We get histiocytomas. There are a variety of things which are relatively benign. Of the things that we need to pay attention to are things like, and Luke, you mentioned earlier, mast cell tumors. And you know, the challenge with mast cell tumors is their variability in appearance. You know, it can be an actual growth to just a swelling to just an area of redness. And there's sometimes so they're not easy to detect, because we think of cancer as abnormal growth, a tumor, okay? And for the most part, that's correct. But mast cell tumors can masquerade as a variety of things. And so when something's not responding, boy, at the very least, do a fine needle aspirate or take a biopsy and make sure you don't have something else. And we talked a lot about allergies here, and which are characterized by itch, okay? There is a form of skin cancer that is characterized not by tumors for the most part, but by itch. And that is what we call cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, okay? And it's thankfully very uncommon, but there are a variety of manifestations, but especially if you have an older dog who for the first time becomes itchy, that's unusual. Most allergic dogs start when they're young, okay? Less than a year or in the first 3 years of life. It's not common to develop allergies from 6, 7, 8 or more advanced age. So if I'm seeing a 10-year-old dog who's never had any kind of itch, and there's itching, and especially if it developed rapidly into a fairly severe state, cutaneous T-cell lymphoma is one that you should be careful of. And it's not always masses. It's areas of scale, it's areas of hair loss, areas of intense irritation. And so that's an important one not to miss out on.
How would you test for that? Is it just a scraping?
No, it's a skin biopsy. So it's a little local anesthetic, and we take a small sample of skin, and it's readily diagnosed with a skin biopsy.
You're not thinking that Grayson has that, do you? Are you, Ginger? I don't need any more fuzzy butts with problems.
No, but you know, Smiley is,
yes, I know,
give or take 6 years old, and he started being itchy, scratchy maybe a month ago. And I noticed his skin is kind of scaly. That's who I was asking about earlier. So he has an appointment this week sometime, and yeah, we're going to be checking that out.
Yeah, thank you. That's wonderful advice. I don't think I've ever heard. Did you say it was T-cell lymphoma?
T-cell lymphoma, yeah.
That presents that way. It doesn't present that way all the time, though, right?
It can be variable. Sometimes it can be lumpy bumpy, okay, for sure. Sometimes it's areas of depigmentation. So we also get B-cell lymphomas. Okay, it says T-cell and B-cell lymphomas. And B-cell lymphoma, which are more the systemic ones, those are under the skin if they involve the skin. This is very much involving the epidermal layer and subepidermal layer of the skin. And it's very intriguing because it is characterized in many dogs by moderate to fairly severe irritation as the key presenting problem. It can develop into other things, you know, and like I said, I mean, scaling and all the rest. And the progression to more intense irritation is quite quick. You mentioned your dog, Ginger, you know, if it's mild to moderate and it's been hanging around for 4, 5, 6 months, maybe unlikely. It's these T-cell lymphoma ones is, boy, this has been only going on for 2 or 3 months, and we got a dog that cannot leave itself alone for the most part, you know. But it's something to consider in any middle-aged to older dog as an unusual but a possible differential diagnosis. Yes.
Thank you for that.
Excellent.
Gives me something else to worry about.
Right. We always need another cancer to worry about around here. That's for sure. We just knock on wood. We just got spared a diagnosis of oral melanoma with Indiana. He had a mass on his throat. and
Oh,
it's a non-cancerous
good.
tissue. So I've lost 3 dogs to cancer. All 3 dogs of my boys that have died from cancer. So when it comes to cancer, I feel like I'm cursed. So
Yeah.
with Indiana, it doesn't seem like he has that problem. And so thank goodness for that. So all right,
And
guys.
I want to put in a big thank you for being on the show, but I want to thank
Yeah,
Zoetis for Palladia.
Yeah.
My dog Lily was actually on it for a year. I noticed some behavior issues with her and had her checked out, and she had a gist tumor. And then she had already had 1 stomach cancer. So she said stomach cancer twice. And she was on Palladia for a year, and she's off of it. She's been off of it now for a year, I think. And knock on wood, she'll be 16 in November. So
Well, I'm delighted to hear that. And I'm going to be even happier if you email me in a couple of weeks' time and say, I went to the veterinarian. My dog does not have cutaneous T-cell lymphoma.
I will let you know. Yeah. Hang around after the show is over and let me get your email address.
Sure.
And I will definitely do that.
Yeah.
There's one more question I have, and this probably is too big to fully address right now, but it's one that's always been in the back of my mind, is trying to look at the risk factors for cancer, the ones that we just can't figure out. Is it clear in your mind that one of the risk factors for mast cell tumors in dogs is a not correctly working immune system, or a jacked up, or something? Do you feel like in your profession and your experience that mast cell cancer is very closely tied to the immune allergic process in dogs? Has that been your finding?
Yeah, look, I'm not an oncologist. Okay, let me
Right.
first state that. Okay, and so I want to tread very carefully, but I think that immune dysregulation is a significant factor in the development of and exacerbation of cancerous disease. And I think that's probably true. There's a lot of factors that go into it. Genetic predisposition, as you well probably know better than me. But yeah, I do think so. And, you know, to that point, Luke, and as I say, you probably know more about cancer than me, but it's very well established in humans, and we haven't done as good a job in veterinary medicine. But the link between the unfortunate people who have chronic immune disease, immune mediated disease, okay, whatever it is, IBD, allergies, you know, if you suffer from a chronic immune mediated disease, we know it from some really good research in humans that puts you at increased risk for developing cancer, okay? And I think it's the same in dogs. And what that relates to then is, you know, you've got a disease that's affecting your immune system, therefore it has an effect on what's important in terms of immune surveillance and removal of potentially neoplastic cells, which is now it's all dysregulated. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, you know, you got one of these chronic diseases and that puts you at increased risk for even worse. You know, it's a tough situation, but they're inextricably linked. There's no question.
Well, that's the same answer that all the veterinary oncologists have given too. So
Yeah.
you're spot on. Your thinking is very similar to their thinking, that
Yeah.
there's a causal relationship. There's definitely a correlation. There's a causal link, probably a causal link too. But the mechanism of action is so vastly complex, and we still don't know all the actors. We don't know all the interleukins. We don't know all the growth factors, the this or that. We don't know all the characters in this vast complex play of oncology, unfortunately. Gosh,
Yeah.
I hate leaving I hate leaving things on such a dour note talking about cancer, but that's kind of what we talk about a lot here on this show. All right, Dr. Andy Hillier, you have been incredible. Just a wellspring of information and optimism too. Thank you for that. We certainly need more optimism in veterinary medicine. Have I covered all the bases? Everything you want to talk about?
You have. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'll end off by just saying we're right at the beginning. I think I forget if we were on air or not, but we talked about Itchy Pet Awareness Month in August. And you know, you can go online to itchingforhelp.com. If there's a pet owner here who wants to some uncertainty, is the itching, scratching that I'm seeing in my dog, is this an issue or is this just normal dog behavior? Itchingforhelp.com is a site that asks. Itching for Help, as in HELP. And it's a site that asks a series of very few, I think there's 5 or 6 questions. And if you answer yes to some of those, it says you should really see your veterinarian. If the answer is no, then probably what you're observing is normal behavior. But it's helpful because not everybody understands, is this abnormal or is this kind of what I should expect?
Good. So it's like a resource for pet parents to go there and find out if their fuzzy butt is a candidate for Cytopoint or Apoquel, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, you
Correct.
guys also have I went to your one for Librella. You have a wonderful, same thing for Librella. You guys do a wonderful job of that, having, because pet parents need that help. How do I know when this is allergic dermatitis or this could respond favorably to this to Cytopoint? So thank you for doing that. All right, Ginger, anything else before as we wrap things up?
No, I think I'm finished adding to your
Good.
podcast, to the questions.
All right, because I'm getting pretty sneezy and snotty on my end over here.
Yeah,
I'm not
you
sure how much
are.
longer I can continue this show. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this episode. My apologies for the technical difficulty and for the allergies that I had, although it was very appropriate given that this is itchy dog month. I guess August is itchy dog month. So go to the website, Itching for Help. Is that right? .com.
Correct.
Find out if your fuzzy butt is a candidate for Cytopoint or Apoquel, and certainly go see your GP about more to get more information on that. All right, everyone. Thanks again to Dr. Andy Hillier with Zoetis for joining us this week. We'll talk to you next week. We drop episodes on every Tuesday, typically at midnight Central Time. On Tuesday, you can find us on our YouTube channel, which is fuzzybutstudios.com, or you can find us on the podcast platforms such as iHeartRadio or Spotify. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everyone. Puppy up. Talk soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys. Thank you.